it is still about the dispute over Northern Ireland Protocol. We currently have a US delegation in Europe. Some say it's more symbolic than significant. What's your take on it?
No, it's much more than symbolic, because the US involvement in the peace process in Ireland has been one of significant substance over the last number of decades. And when someone of the experience of Richie Neal, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee of the House, leads that bipartisan delegation, both Republicans and Democrats, both to Brussels, to London and to Dublin. That is significant, particularly given the desire of the United Kingdom government to have a trade deal with the United States, and also the genuine desire of the US and these representatives that the Good Friday Agreement would be enhanced, not undermined, and that the carefully calibrated work that has been done in respect of the design of the protocol would be upheld. Now, I had good discussions with them during the week. I mean, they do understand the need to work on the operation of the protocol, but the trade representatives and those with experience of trade on that delegation really couldn't see anything that couldn't be resolved in terms of the technicalities around the protocol and the issues around the operation of it between the UK government and the European Union, which I thought was quite helpful.
But realistically, what can be achieved? What is the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario for you, given that it was signed in 2019 and here we are, still in dispute?
The best case scenario is for the United Kingdom government to engage in intensive negotiations with the European Union with a view to bringing about a resolution to these issues. Disputes of this kind need a will to resolve them. I've questioned myself whether that will exists, particularly within the United Kingdom government, for quite some time, because when I met with the European Union Vice President last year, I asked him to go to Northern Ireland, meet all the parties, listen, and come back with new proposals. He did all of that. Last October came forward with a significant set of proposals, but he was not reciprocated by the UK government at the time. There has been changes and so on in terms of the negotiation team. Liz Truss is now in charge. So in my view, UK government hasn't given that process a chance. And we're concerned as to whether there are different agendas at play, or whether the UK government really wants to settle this, because I don't see the landing zone for the UK government, or they're not clear what would resolve this. I am clear about politicians in Northern Ireland. I have a fair idea where the unionist politicians are, their concerns and where they would like to land this, particularly goods going from UK to Northern Ireland. I think if the technocrats were allowed to engage, people from industry as well should be given a voice at the table, because we met them recently. They're saying to us, the protocol is working for manufacturing, it's working for the meat industry, it's working for the dairy industry. There are smaller sectors where it's not working optimally for them, and therefore they have the know-how and the expertise, minus the politics, to resolve genuine outstanding issues that are there.
Minister, in your view, is the UK acting in good faith? I mean, when it signed the protocol back in 2019, do you think the UK knew exactly what they were signing up to?
Well, I think, oh yes, they knew exactly what they were signing up to, and in fact, all the documentation would attest to that. I mean, the implications of Brexit were spelt out, but also the implications of the protocol. And it was the British Prime Minister who recommended the protocol and the trade agreement to the United Kingdom Parliament, which then subsequently ratified the international treaty with the European Union. And it's the UK government really has decided now to indicate that they're now contemplating reneging and undermining that international treaty unilaterally. Now, that's not how democracies and countries of like mind normally behave. And I would appeal to the UK government that to engage with the European Union. They have said, to be fair, that they're willing to engage, but they've now put another sort of demand on the table that if we don't get our way, we're going to go ahead with this legislation anyway. And that's not how we normally engage.
You said before that all options are on the table. What are you referring to? And is a renegotiation even an option?
No. When I referenced renegotiation, that was in the context of the European Union response to the United Kingdom unilaterally enacting legislation to get rid and tear up the agreement that they'd entered into with the European Union. The European Union are saying all options remain on the table in terms of how the European Union would respond to the United Kingdom if that eventuality happened. Of course, we don't want to go near there. We're just all experiencing these number of days talking to representatives from the Ukrainian government, for example. There's a terrible war on the people of Ukraine, which is affecting all of Europe. United Kingdom has led well on the Ukrainian war. I give credit to the United Kingdom government for their leadership in that respect. But geopolitically, UK, Ireland, the United States should be in alignment on the big issues. These issues should not be the subject matter of the dispute of this kind. They can be resolved. I'm certain of that. I know the detail of this. The detail of this can be resolved if there is a will on all sides to resolve it. And I would appeal to the British government to really engage with the European Union and through the Vice President Maros Sefcovic, who has been extremely flexible in respect of this issue.
Can it be resolved before you leave office in December? How optimistic are you?
I'll still be in government in December, but as
Leaving
you
your
know,
position.
we have an arrangement
Yes.
with our coalition party. It can, of course, be resolved before Christmas. It comes back to that issue of if there's a will there, it certainly can be, because the issues themselves are not of a kind that should prevent resolution. That's my genuine view, if there's honest engagement on all sides. And that is the wish of all at European Union level also. They have no desire for further disruption or for further trouble. We have enough challenges. We've just come out of COVID-19, or the emergency phase of COVID-19, where Europe has responded very well. We now have this terrible war in relation to Ukraine. We have significant cost of living issues and economic issues. We don't need this dispute.
Some say that perhaps if talks fail, there could be a trade war between the EU and UK. What are the prospects of that?
Well, unilateralism by one party can create that response, but nobody wants that. So that's down the line, but that's something that we do not want to contemplate. At the time of COP26 last year, we again had a similar moment like this, where I think Britain pulled back somewhat from some of what it was threatening to do at that time. And that's becoming frustrating for member states within the European Union and for the Commission, that we have this stop-start approach to the engagement, and that we have these kind of threats of unilateral action from time to time. And that's not conducive to a constructive resolution of the issues.
Prime Minister, we know that Europe is trying to cut its reliance on Russian oil and gas, and of course Ireland is doing the same. But in that transition to renewables, you're also, I guess, coming across high prices. In fact, that transition could cost you 30% more. Is that impacting your transition to renewables?
No, I mean, our fundamental challenge in terms of moving to renewables will be structural delivery planning, and we're working on that. We've now created a streamlined planning framework for offshore wind development in Ireland. I mean, for the next decade, the big investment in Ireland will be offshore wind. We're one of the windiest sea coasts in Ireland, particularly in the western seaboard, in the world. So wind is Ireland's oil, and that's how we're going to play it for the long term. And certainly by the mid-2030s, we want to be exporting energy, and that's our ambition. And what the war in Ukraine is teaching us, and indeed the rest of Europe, and when President von der Leyen puts the graphs up on the wall, there's only one journey here. It's a journey towards renewables. And we're going to have to double down on that, notwithstanding the enormous pressures at the moment on the prices around fossil fuels and so on, and energy issues. I think this is a watershed, actually, in the transition from fossil fuels to renewables. And I actually see an acceleration and a lessening of the dependency on oil and gas.
This war is also causing escalating inflation, and it's costing your people a lot of grief. There is a cost, I guess, crisis right now. Is it about to get worse before it gets better?
I think it will be very challenging to the end of the year, and probably will get worse to the end of the year. But again, various governments are taking measures to ease the pressure on people. But the war is having an impact, and the war has many facets to it. I mean, Putin knows what he's doing in terms of creating the terror in Ukraine that's led to a huge humanitarian crisis, the worst since World War II, an energy crisis, and now, significantly, a food crisis, potentially famine. When you combine the absence of exports from Ukraine, in terms of grain and so on, with other droughts in the Horn of Africa and so on, we're facing very difficult scenarios internationally and globally into the future. But we've got to hold the line, because what's at stake here is our fundamental values of democracy, of freedom of speech, free media. And I genuinely believe in what President Biden says, that there is a very significant challenge ahead of us between those of us of like-minded states, democracies who cherish these values versus the authoritarian regimes, and those who want to really snuff out free media, who want to undermine the contrarian view within society, freedom of opinion. These are values that can be taken from us by authoritarian leaders more quickly than perhaps we might think. And therefore, what I'm saying basic to our peoples, we didn't want this war, but nonetheless the consequences of it will be felt by all of us in all societies in Europe. But once we have the clear vision as to why we're taking the stance we're taking, then I think people will wear that and take it on board and put the shoulder to the wheel to make sure we can absorb these pressures and come out the other side stronger and better for it.